Today, we have Guy Kawasaki. He is a serial entrepreneur and evangelist. In fact, he helped popularize the term evangelist in business and marketing. Right now, he is the chief evangelist of Canva and creator of Guy Kawasaki's Remarkable People podcast. I listened to that podcast. I love that podcast. He's an executive fellow of the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley and is adjunct professor of the University of New South Wales in Australia. He was the chief evangelist of Apple and a trustee of the Wikimedia Foundation. He has written Wise Guy, I'm reading that currently, The Art of the Start 2.0, The Art of Social Media, Enchantment, and many other books. Guy has a BA from Stanford University, an MBA from UCLA, and an honorary doctorate from Babson College. So I guess I should be calling you Dr. Kawasaki.
No. Well, um, no.
I love it. Guy gives over 50 keynote speeches per year. His clients include Apple, Nike, Gartner, Audi, Google, Microsoft, and Breitling, as well as dozens of trade associations. His topics include innovation, enchantment, social media, evangelism, and entrepreneurship. So please welcome Mr. Guy Kawasaki.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So I was watching some of your past talks, and you did one at TEDx Palo Alto Salon, and you provided two tips. You said default to yes and pay it forward. And I think you are doing both of those today.
Wait, but wasn't that the TEDx where I interviewed Jane Goodall?
No, honestly, I think it was just you by yourself up there. You were giving.
Yeah, I came
it,
back. I've done two for them. That's right. The first one I did was Jane Goodall and I, and the second one was just myself talking about my book. Yes.
Well, I love you as a speaker. And I've roped my husband into watching some of your talks as well. And we both just sit there with a smile on our face. You just have that natural charisma. And one question I wanted to ask, have you always been so direct and so straightforward, or does that just come the further you get into your career? Because you just tell it like it
Yes.
is.
No. There's definitely a trend. So I'm 66 years old right now, and I'm not going to apply for any other jobs. I don't need any references. I don't need any more friends. I don't need anything. I have my 4 children, my wife, my surfing buddies. That's it. So I'm not sucking up to anybody. So,
I
unlike
love it.
unlike members of Congress, I don't lick anybody's boots anymore. So that is something that I was on that trend for a long time, but let's just say at 25, I didn't cop the same attitude that I do now. Let's just say.
Well, you are so fun to listen to because you do. You just tell it like it is, and you don't care. I mean, you just give it straight, and I love it. You don't sugarcoat anything.
Well,
So let's go ahead and get started. I ask this to a lot of people that I interview, but it's because I want my students to know just how important what we're studying in interpersonal skills and advanced public speaking. I want them to know how important these skills are. So in your experience, how important are good communication skills in relation to success and moving ahead professionally?
that's sort of like asking how important is motherhood, democracy, and apple pie. I mean, um, yeah, there is a theory that if you are a brilliant engineer, you can be like on the spectrum, and you can have a lot of issues. But if you're not a brilliant engineer, I kind of divide the world into two pieces, that you're either someone who can make stuff or you can sell stuff. And so you better be a really great maker if you can't sell. And if you can sell, then you don't have to be a great maker at all. So basically I'm trying to tell you, maybe it's not indispensable, but it sure makes life easier if you can communicate.
Wonderful. Well, in watching your talks, you have that charisma, you have that technical knowledge, and you just make it look effortless. So how do you prepare for a speech or a presentation that you have to give in terms of practicing and preparing?
There's two answers to this. So, yeah, before any given keynote, and this is pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So before any given keynote, and it could be for 50 people or 15,000 people, I basically I look at the company's website, I check out their reviews, I ask them who they consider the competition to be. You know, if I can, I try to get one of their products and use it, something like that. But generally speaking, depending on how you want to count, if you were to say, okay, guys, so how many hours or minutes do you spend actually prepping your speech for a keynote? I don't know if I want to tell you this, but I would say 15 minutes to 30 minutes,
Oh,
something
geez,
like
you're
that.
breaking my heart, God. Oh my gosh. Well, that's
Yeah,
because
no.
you know it. You
Well,
know it
yeah.
and you
Yeah,
live it.
so exactly. So, so yes. So you could say Guy Kawasaki said he prepares 15 to 30 minutes for a speech. Or you could say Guy Kawasaki spent 30 years preparing for a speech. Depends on how you want to look at it. It's kind of the Malcolm Gladwell theory of blinking, right? So if you do something for 10,000 hours, then you can blink and make a decision and do it. But so is it the length of the blink or the 10,000 hours?
Mhm.
It's kind of both, actually.
Do you think when you first started giving presentations, you were just automatically good at it? Do you think you had a
No,
natural ability?
no, 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 no. It took years and years to get to this. And you also have to understand that I give a handful of speeches over and over. So, this is kind of like if you ask, I don't know, Taylor Swift, how long do you rehearse a song? Well, when she started singing that song, probably a lot. But today, I doubt that she spends hours and hours in rehearsal for every new concert. So a lot of it is just sheer repetition.
Mhm. Can you think of a time when you just totally screwed up and you learned something from it?
Depends how you define totally screwed up. I have given literally tens of thousands of speeches, and I, I, I can't think of a time where I quote unquote totally screwed up.
Mhm.
Um, uh, there were times, well, that in the middle of a speech I got this. Well, before the speech, so I had it going on stage. I had this splitting migraine headache, and so I could not even stand. But I made them give me a chair, and I gave the best shot that I could. So that was with a migraine headache. I have had another case where I started to get vertigo.
Mm.
But I mean, but this is, two times out of, I don't know, 10,000.
Mhm.
Uh, but have I ever, now how would, like, what would you define a screw up? I mean, I'm using a presentation, so I have, cues. Uh, yeah, it's not like I dropped an F bomb to a Christian organization. It's not like I spoke to the NRA and said, well, we need gun control. I never spoke for a cigarette company and said we should ban cigarettes. I mean, if that's what you mean.
Well, I'm just wondering, were you ever giving a talk and you had a technical difficulty? And then when you left the stage, you were like, oh man, I need to check on that before I give my next talk.
Uh, well, usually the technical difficulty is caused by the host, right? So,
Mhm.
if their AV system screws up, whose fault is that? I have had instances where, I revised a presentation for another client and I forgot that I put in a slide. So I put in a slide that wasn't appropriate to the next presentation. I have done that. But I can recover from that. I've had computers crash, but I can give my speech without a computer. I mean, this just, shit happens, but I can't think of one that I totally blew it
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah. Well, I once gave a talk. This was back in college with my middle
Yeah.
button totally open. And this was back in the day when we had
Middle of what?
my middle button of my shirt. I was in
Oh.
college and and I learned something from that. But this was back when you had the VHS tapes and there was a big
Yeah.
old camcorder in the back of the room and you had to bring
Yeah.
in your VHS tape. And then later on, when you got home, you had to write a self-review on how
Yeah.
you think you did. So imagine
Yeah.
what I put on there. And I learned I'm never again wearing a button-up shirt to do a presentation ever, ever. So,
Well, but you never know. He may have gotten high ratings.
uh, yeah, I don't
No.
know. I don't think my teacher scored me any higher from that.
All
Uh,
right.
so in terms of the students right now, that's really why I'm doing a lot of these interviews and I'm trying to do them because I'm trying to think outside of the box. Right
Okay.
now with COVID, it's just really hard to be a student. It's hard to
Yeah.
have that same college experience. You're
Sure.
not really able to go out to parties anymore. You're not really able to be in class. So there are some students that are probably getting lectures that are absolutely boring and horrible. But I do have some seniors in my classes, and they're thinking about going out into the workforce and entering the job market. Do you
Hmm.
have any advice for them on how to maybe get a leg up or set themselves apart as they try to do that?
Well, at the very base, uh, and I seriously, you are one of the few people that have it well done, is just to look at your camera setup. So, I mean, if you look at your video, you see that behind you, things are out of focus and the light is coming from in front of you, not in back of you. Uh, and the background is clean and you're using a microphone. So, I'm using a microphone. My background is clean. My background is out of also my background is also out of focus. Or I show you my background. So when it
So
goes in
cool.
focus, that's what it is. But
Mhm.
then when my face is in front, my face is in focus, and I want you to know that that's not how I actually live, right? So I'm in a closet. This is a set, if you will. So that bamboo is there for a purpose, and that's like one bookshelf with books and lights on it, and a Buddha and a fig plant. The fig plant is plastic, but all of that is staged. And so
Mhm.
if I could zoom out, you would see that I'm in a tiny little closet. And the reason why the wall is black is because that's all acoustic tile. So
Mhm.
I don't want any echoes in this room. So anyway, long story short, if you want to stand out, one way to stand out is to stop using that crappy built-in laptop computer with the crappy speaker and the crappy microphone in your Dell Inspiron from 2005 or something. Now, but you know what? I mean, I understand that what I just described, if you did it right, might cost you $1,200. So, I can't tell you that every student's going to spend $1,200 to look good. But I mean, ask your parents for Christmas for a digital camera. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Okay. But I mean, no, seriously. So, I don't want you to think that I'm saying, okay, so you have to spend that money. On the other hand, um, have you ever spent $1,200 for a business person? Have you ever spent $1,200 on a business trip? Have you're in Nashville, or I mean, you're in Tennessee or Kentucky, right? So, you know,
I'm in Tennessee.
okay, so you're in Tennessee. So if you had to fly on a business trip to, let's say, San Francisco, coach airfare, what is it? I don't know, 750 bucks.
Mhm.
Uh, Catching your Uber to downtown San Francisco, 75 bucks. Unless you're staying in a real flea bag hotel, let's say it's 300 bucks. So it's 2 nights, so it's 600 bucks. And then you got to eat. So when you add all that up, probably a business trip to San Francisco is 1500 bucks, right?
Yes.
Well, for that 1500 bucks, you could have the ultimate camera set up forever, forever, not just for 2 days to San Francisco, for freaking ever. And so, I'm telling you, it's worth it. That's
Well,
number one.
and also, like you said, just having the light in front of you. And that's what I
Yeah.
tell some of my students is like, set your desk or put your laptop directly in, behind a window so that
Yeah.
you have light coming in on your face. Buy a
You mean in
cheap
front? You
lamp.
mean you mean in front of the window,
Well, yeah, set
not
it in
behind
front
it?
of the window so the light is coming in behind it. Yes, you caught me.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so that you have light directly on your face. And I tell them overhead lighting, bad, bad.
Yeah.
Behind
So
lighting, bad.
funny. Yes, funny. So, um, I just turned on the overhead lighting.
Like you
This
said,
looks better.
yes,
This looks better. So I have a ring light in front of me. I have one LED light shining to the ceiling. I have another LED light shining to the ceiling. So, and then these lights here, I'll shut them and I'll turn them on. That is like a $7 battery powered string of LED lights. But you see, when it's out of focus, it
it's
has
beautiful.
this like great, bokeh effect. And so all of this is planned. I also, let me see, we're going way too deep in this one subject.
I like this. This is good.
Okay. So, although although I am shinier than usual because it's been a while since I did it, but before every video conference or appearance, I use I put to take away the shine, and also because I surf a lot, so I get sunburned a lot. So I'm trying to reduce the sunburn effect. So I'm kind of a L'Oreal guy. So there's that.
Crazy. It's like I'm seeing the wizard for the first time and nobody gets to see the wizard. This is so
So okay,
cool.
so the bottom line is, make your audio and video good. Um, and then I would say that the key message I want to tell you is to use stories. And if you just fixed your camera and used stories, you'd be ahead of 99% of the people in the world. Because most people, they just use adjectives and they say, I'm hardworking, I'm smart, I'm aggressive, I'm bright, I'm, whatever. But like every candidate says that. You think the candidate before you said, I'm a dumbass who's lazy? I mean, everybody says the same thing. So you need to tell a story of how when you were in college, you interned and you worked, while you were going to school full time, you had a full time job, and you need to tell this story so that people conclude that you're hardworking and you're disciplined and you completed a 4-year program in 3 years while working full time, and it's stories that move the needle.
You also, so in an article you wrote for the Harvard Business Review, you said there are 3 ways to effectively evangelize: old-fashioned schmoozing, public
Mhm.
speaking, and social media. So in terms of students, do you think that they need to be their own evangelists?
Well, evangelism comes from a Greek word meaning bringing the good news. So I am not an evangelist for Guy Kawasaki. I'm an evangelist for Canva. I used to be an evangelist for Macintosh. I also am a brand ambassador, which the way I do it is kind of evangelistic for Peace Vans. It's a company that customizes Mercedes mattresses, and for Merge 4, which is the ultimate sock company. So I'll just show you. So these are some Merge 4 makes the coolest socks.
Those are
Okay, so
so cool.
there's that. Uh, a little more conservative.
Oh,
I don't mean
business.
conservative. Yeah, I don't mean conservative in the Mitch McConnell sense. I mean less design oriented. So anyway, so you know, uh, I I am trying to tell you that I don't consider myself an evangelist for Guy Kawasaki. I'm an evangelist for products and services, which are very good. And so, this is a interesting topic because I don't think people should become evangelists for themselves. It's a slippery slope when someone says, "Yeah, I'm going to work on the brand called me. I'm going to be an evangelist for myself. I'm going to position myself as a guru and a thought leader." I think all of that is bullshit. Um, that let me tell you something. Steve Jobs, I would say, never ever said to himself, how can I position myself as a visionary? Like, what could I do? I don't think that Elon Musk sits around saying, Elon, how are you going to position yourself as a thought leader, as a pioneer, as an innovator? I'm telling you that Steve Jobs and Elon Musk made just totally kick ass products. And because they made such kick ass products, guess what? People thought of them as visionaries and thought leaders. But it's not because they tried to position themselves as thought leaders and visionaries, it's because they actually showed the beef. They actually did the stuff that would position themselves as visionaries and thought leaders. So this is a long diatribe telling you, get out of your own bubble and just make something great. Everything else will follow from that.
Have you ever seen a pitch or been pitched something that you didn't think would do well that ended up doing really awesome?
Yeah. How long you got? I mean, listen, I quit Apple twice. I turned down Steve for a job. So yeah, three times I passed on Apple, right? Um, I've I was asked if I wanted to interview for this first CEO position of Yahoo. I turned that down. So, you know, right there is $2.5 billion. I mean, it would be a building in my honor at the University of Louisville if it weren't for those decisions.
Well, in terms of your book right now that I'm reading, Wise Guy, I really like it because now there are a couple of parts I want to talk about. The first one
Okay.
is, and I have his name written down, I would like to thank Harold Keebles as well, because the way that
Yes.
you described the things that you learned and the type of writer that you are and the type of grammar that you do, that you go in there and you take out all of the passive voice and you don't like the words that end in ly.
Adverbs, yeah.
Yes, I feel like I have actually learned a tremendous amount. I mean, because I was in AP English. And I could have really, I liked my teacher, but I think I could have really used Harold Keebles.
Most people could really have used Harold Keebles. And there's another lesson there that as you look back on your life, maybe you'll be the person. When you look back on your life and you ask yourself, who did I learn the most from? It will be from the toughest teachers. It's the teachers that graded the hardest, held you up to the highest standard. It's not the teachers that let you slack off and didn't push you.
Mhm.
So that's easy for me to say after the fact, and it may take you 20 years to figure this out, but the toughest teachers teach you the most.
Do you think the toughest teachers are the ones So I've heard that there are two types of coaches, those that coach up and those that coach down. And down
Yeah.
being those that put fear in you. Do you think that's a tough teacher, or do you think it's all in their grading?
Well, let's just say that Steve Jobs was the down style, right? So he put fear in me. Uh, Harold Keebles, he kind of put fear in me too, because he was such a tough teacher. He'd give you a C. It wouldn't bother him at all. Um, I and I am not this kind of touchy feely positive psychology, focus on only the positive. When for example, when people ask me to review their pitches, I tell them up front, all right, so you understand, and I want you to make an active decision. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. So if you're looking only for positives and you're looking only for, warm and fuzzies, don't waste my time. And I'm going to rip your pitch. Okay.
Mhm.
If you can deal with that, tell me now. But if you can't, it's okay. So, so I'm closer to the rip style than anything else.
I do have one more question. Uh,
Okay.
what advice about jobs and professional do you think that are you passing on to your children? In that, are you trying to sway them in a certain direction? Are you
Do
telling
you
them
have
to
children?
follow their passion?
Do you have children?
I do. I do. I have
How old are they?
He's 6 and he's totally
Oh,
rotten.
okay. So no. So you have not encountered this yet. So the extent to which you can tell your kids what to do is vastly overrated by people who have older children. So, um, yeah, that is a delusion. Uh, the message that I try to pass to my kids, and it's not clear that I'm successful. Okay, but I think one of the things that I learned about working with bosses is that your job is to make your boss look good.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, particularly young people, maybe they just cannot grok that. They think like, my job is to make myself look good. My job is to make myself look good, and it might make my boss look bad. And that's okay, because then I'll be promoted above him or her. But I think that is just all totally wrong. Your job is to make your boss look good. And if you cannot make your boss look good, that means either you're incompetent or they're incompetent. But the rising tide floats all boats. If you want to use a NASCAR analogy, you want a draft behind your boss. I have never seen a case where someone says, okay, I am better than my boss, I'm going to make him or her look bad, and I'm going to get promoted above him or her. Nobody ever gets promoted above a bad boss. Okay, so your job is to make your boss look good, and that's the greatest wisdom I could pass
Oh, I love
along
it.
for people.
No, I think it's great. So I just really appreciate you being here today. Is there a question that you think is important that I didn't ask you?
Oh, it's funny you should ask that question, because unless you got that from my podcast, because
No, I
I
did
learned
not.
that. Okay. So I interviewed a woman named Dion Cersei, and she is a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter for the New York Times. And she reports on conflicts. Okay. So she goes and she does a story on Boko Haram. She's not, just writing about, tea time at Tiffany, or the Broadway reviews. So she told me, because I asked her, obviously she's a great investigative reporter. I said, you got any tips for me as a podcaster? And she said, at the end of every interview, you should ask the people you're talking to, is there anything that I didn't ask that I should have? So There you go.
Thank
You're going to
you.
win a Pulitzer someday. Yeah.
Hey, here's
Um,
hoping I'm on your podcast one day. First I got to be remarkable.
that's a funny, uh, we're going to go down another rat hole. So it's funny you should mention that because every day I get pitched by people and it goes something like this. My name is Joe Blow. I have a company called Blow Consulting, and I am 25 years old, and I have revenue up to middle six digits, and I enjoy your podcasts. I love Jane Goodall's episode, Margaret Atwood's, Christy Yamaguchi's, Steven Pinker, Andrew Yang. I love those episodes. And I think I can add a lot to your podcast because I am remarkable too. I have
Mhm.
written a book called The Blow Away. It's published by Blow Press. And so I'd like to arrange to be on your podcast. And it takes every ounce of strength for me to not send that person an email saying, who the hell do you think you are? You think you're equal to Jane Goodall? By what standard are you even close to Jane Goodall? But I don't do that, Ashley, because I'm getting old and more mellow. So I just send them an email. They get one of two emails, depending on how feisty I am. So one email says, I have just been inundated by people who are requesting to be on my podcast. I'm sorry, but I just can't handle, you know, I not handle you, but I can't handle any more guests right now. So that's one. That's if I'm like in a really mellow mood. Sometimes though, I send them, I said, so, Joe, I'm just not familiar with your work. So could you just explain to me how you have dented the universe a la Jane Goodall, Margaret Atwood, Christy Yamaguchi, Steven Pinker, Stephen Wolfram, Bob Cialdini. And you know what? I hardly ever get a request back.
Oh,
So,
I can understand why.
so I was so, um, well, so you could ask me, so Guy, what's your podcast? Here, that's a question you didn't ask.
Oh, yeah. Well, I listen to it. I just assume everybody else listens to it. Yes.
Well,
Please talk to me about your podcast. There's
all
one
right.
episode that I didn't get to listen to, and it's Scott Galloway, which by the way,
Yeah.
I love Scott Galloway. He doesn't even realize that he tweets back to me because that's my alter ego. But I didn't get to listen to that because that's somebody else that I feel like just kind of tells it like it is.
That's
And
for
I
sure.
like
Yes.
those kind of people. So please talk more about your
Yeah.
podcast.
So my podcast is called Remarkable People. You can find it at remarkablepeople.com. And it is a collection of interviews once a week, about an hour long, of me with a remarkable person. And just so you know, this is not a 50-50 interview kind of style. It's not half me and half the guest. It's 95-5. The guest, 5% is me. So it's always about the guest. And what I'm trying to do is get the remarkableness out of them as information so that by listening to my podcast, you can be more remarkable too. And that's what I do 52 times a year. That's the core of my existence right now. So if you really want to learn how to be remarkable, listen to the Remarkable People podcast.
Well, you got a remarkable person interviewing remarkable people. So I
you know,
appreciate you.
Ashley, I have to tell you something though. You know what? It's not clear to me that I would pass my own test for being remarkable. Seriously, that's not false modesty because I have many qualities, but false modesty is not one of them. And so I I really have a high standard. Now, this is remarkable people, not rich people or famous people.
Mhm.
So you can be remarkable but not rich and famous. Just FYI. In fact, wealth may be contraindicated for being remarkable in my perspective for my podcast, but that's another hole we don't need to go down. So yeah, it's about remarkable people who have overcome problems or have done great things for the world, not rich and famous people.
You on the one episode, I forget who it was you were talking to. You all talked about imposter syndrome.
Yes, yes.
Have you ever
That's
felt that?
no.
I knew you were going to say that. That's why I wanted to ask.
Well, the guest was Shelley Archambault, and imposter syndrome, for those of you who don't know, is, when you get an opportunity, you get something, you invited to make a speech, you're invited to make a contribution, or some kind of position or something. You think, I don't deserve this, I'm not good enough for it, I can't do this, I'm an imposter. And the recommendation of Shelley is that you need to get over that. You need to just say yes and figure it out later. You need to fake it till you make it. And I'll tell you, my experience in life is that most people are imposters. So you're not alone. So, look around the table. You're all faking it.
Mhm. Well, I just thank you so much for being here. And I just cannot believe I was just sitting down talking to Guy Kawasaki. This is nuts. And just so you know, I had imposter syndrome leading up to this interview.
Well, I hope I have convinced you that you should not have imposter syndrome. Well, everybody has imposter syndrome. It's whether you get over it or not. That's the test.
I'm here.
That's right. That's right. You're faking it until you make it. Or maybe you faked it and you made it. So,
I guess we'll
okay,
find out.
we will. Indeed.
Again, thank you so much. So,
You're very welcome. It's
and
my
all.
pleasure. All the best to you.